Please subscribe to hear more Cryptid Tales. If you like the story you heard, give us a thumbs up and feel free to leave us a comment. If you'd like to hear your own cryptid encounter on Cryptid Tales, send us an email at cryptidtalesmail@gmail.com. In my third year in Oregon, I had established a cabin to my liking and built a small smokehouse for elk and salmon. During my treks around the King Mountain areas and lakes, I have come in contact with black bear, mountain lion, bull elk, timber rattlers, the occasional vigilantes with AR-15s guarding their crops, and lots of critters that make you grateful to be alive on a daily basis. Being a Desert Storm veteran and living in the woods all my life, I have never really found anything to get me riled up much. Well, that is until I moved to Oregon. Here's my story. I made a friend there in Oregon, a local that was born and raised in the areas between Grants Pass and Roseburg. His father was a gold prospector, and he had learned the trade. Not long after I met my friend, his father passed and the mining claim sat empty. I will not mention the claim, as non-locals don't have any business with it, but to any that know, there was a converted school bus down there that was used to live in. In my third year, my buddy talked me into staying down in the mining claim with him after the rainy season to do some dredging. I had a big American pit bull with me that loved the water and kept us alerted to any critters coming into camp. We stayed in the bus and worked for a couple of weeks with no problems. But soon after is when it all started. At night, my dog would go nuts, barking fiercely toward the water. No matter what I did or said, he would not stop till early in the morning. Time after time, I would go out with my flashlight and shotgun, looking for what he was barking at, but nothing was ever there. I figured the increased currents were making noise and never thought much of it. This went on for weeks. I figured the increased currents were making noise and never thought much of it. This went on for weeks. During the day, we had the dredge running, and it was quite loud. Nothing could really be heard, but there were times where I always thought I saw something in my peripheral vision. I always just thought it was a small animal or the dog, as we let him run loose during the day. Then the pings on top of the bus started at night. I believed them to be sticks or clusters of pine needles falling down. There was one night when my buddy was visiting his mom and the dog was doing his usual barking, but he stopped abruptly and I heard him go under the bus, whimpering. My first thoughts was that a porcupine or a snake had got him, and I went out with a flashlight to help him. While I was bent down with one hand on the rear tires trying to get him to come out, I could see clearly that he was scared, not injured. I had never seen him scared of anything, not even full-grown black bears. Out of nowhere, a rock hit the side of the bus and fell close to me. I was shocked. I stood very still and listened, until not long after when another rock hit the side of the bus right next to me and startled the shit out of me. I made a dead run to the front door of the bus and locked myself inside with my shotgun in hand. I stood motionless in the middle of the bus, peering into the darkness, listening to my heart pounding in my ears. I waited for hours, but nothing else happened. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because my buddy woke me up and I was still sitting upright with the shotgun in my hands. I told him what had happened, and he just laughed at me, teasing me about the boogeyman trying to get me. I didn't find it funny, but I shook it off. I walked all over the mining claim looking for footprints or signs of intruders, but found nothing. 2 nights later, we worked until almost dark and got in a late supper on the campfire. As we were sitting outside after dinner, The dog started to bark and growl into the darkness toward the stream, so I went and got my shotgun. We sat there drinking for an hour or two before we heard the distinct sound of a rock hitting the ground behind us. Maybe it was just because I had some liquid courage, or maybe I was just tired of dealing with the strangeness. Either way, I stood up and yelled toward the water and shot off 2 rounds of buckshot in that direction. The rock stopped, and all was quiet. We finally settled down for the night after putting away the food and dishes. I awoke in the middle of the night to a jolt and wasn't sure why. I turned over and started to go back to sleep when the bus suddenly rocked to one side. I quickly woke up my buddy and told him we were not alone. He grumbled at me and started snoring again. I sat upright in total darkness, trying to adjust my eyes to see anything. The bus rocked hard to one side again as items fell from the pantry and hit the floor. Well, we were both wide awake now. I found a flashlight and looked around out the windows to try and see what was going on. I walked up and down the area of the bus looking out the windows until I went from the right side to the back and shuddered so hard I dropped the flashlight. I fumbled around until I picked it back up and shined it toward the emergency back exit door. My mind could not comprehend what I was seeing, though. The creature was covered with gray and white hair, about 4 to 6 inches long, with a few darker spots that almost looked like old wounds. His chest was clearly visible above the exit lever of the back door, and his massive arms and shoulders were wider than the back window, since I couldn't see all of them. I could clearly see his face, looking sternly back at me. This was an intelligent creature, thinking of its next move. Large black eyes were watching my every move. I stood there for what seemed like hours, frozen with fear, staring in the creature's direction. I watched him shift slightly from side to side like he was swaying from his left to right foot over and over. He showed no fear whatsoever that I could tell. He had very human-like features, but in a different proportion than a normal human. He had a very large face, exposed slightly around the mouth, the nose, and his eyes, with very distinctive eyebrows. His large, squarish teeth were yellowed and stained like those of a wild boar. I don't remember him ever blinking once at all. It was unnerving. He let out a high-pitched yell that could have broke the glass, like 2 metal pipes dragging against each other. We panicked and pointed our guns at him. When we did, he lifted the back of the bus off the ground and dropped it quickly. I knew then and there we were going to die. This massive creature was going to rip this bus apart, and it was all over. He lifted the bus again and dropped it. This wasn't just shock and spring travel. It was like when you're driving too fast on a dirt road and hit a bridge. You could feel the tires impact and then the absorption of the springs. But just as soon as it all started, it was over. He walked off into the darkness and just disappeared. I fell to my knees, gasping to catch my breath. My chest hurt so bad. I don't know if I even remembered to breathe throughout the whole interaction. I finally got my bearings together and waited until first light and got myself out of there. I never went back to that mining claim after dark, and I never will. He was making it damn clear that he didn't want us there, and I'm not going to try.